Welcome back to Chapter 14. In this video, we're talking about styling tables. Just like any item on a web page, you can style a border, and this is no different from tables. However, there is a slight difference on exactly what you can style in a table. For example, by using the same border property and values for a table, th, and td, you can see what the different effects are when it comes to stylizing these different items. For example, if you just have a border set for the table, that is going to set a table around the whole border, not inside the cells or inside the th. It's just going to be around the perimeter of the border. If you set a border to the th, that means that all th items, all table header items, will have a border. In this case, all table headers in this, meaning name, age, and color, all three of them. The same thing happens for the TD. If you apply the border to the TD, all table data cells will have a border, but not the table itself, nor the TH. You can combine all three of these to make sure that every single item has a border, but it may be a bit overkill for what you want to do. You can also modify the cell spacing by using border spacing and setting a value of a numerical length, initial, or inherit, and also you can use border collapse, basically saying separate, collapse, initial, or inherit. To give you a good example of what border spacing is, it basically means it's going to space the content away from the internal borders. To give a good example of this, you're basically setting the padding of the actual cells and content. By setting the border spacing of a table, you are spacing away the content from the inside borders, making it easier to read. On the other hand, if you want to decrease the space, instead of saying border spacing 0, you can actually remove all of the spacing of the borders inside a table by saying border collapse and collapse. Seems a little redundant, but that's what the values are, mainly because when you're stylizing tables, both the HTML and the CSS came way before the initial introduction of any other styling when it comes to CSS, especially modern day CSS, and we still use these rules today. You can also set width and height for your tables, table headers, table rows, and table data by just specifying the width and the height of a numerical value. You can also use table layout, which I'll get to in the Code With Me videos. For example, if you set a table width of 400 pixels, then the table will space out the necessary space in order to fill up 400 pixels, automatically calculating how much space each column should take up. On the other hand, if you set the height to 300 pixels, it'll do the exact same thing, spacing out each of the rows. You can go in and set each row and or each table header to a specified width and height if you want a more uniform look, instead of just having the rows and columns distributed evenly. However, if you do set the table height to 100%, it does not fill up the available space of the browser. Instead, it fills up the available space of the data. So if you do set a height to 100%, don't expect that will do exactly what you want it to do. If you want a table to take up the available space in a browser, you may have to work your way a little around the edges to work that, either with more advanced CSS or even JavaScript. Just like last time, with lists, you must deal with white space when it comes to actual content, not just tables. Now this goes to just about anything, including paragraph tags, but it also includes tables. So what you can do is you can actually set the white space to a value. Now most likely, if you're ever going to use this, chances are you'll either use white space normal or white space no wrap. White space normal basically means that it's going to break up the content naturally so that the content fits in the available space as far as the visual aspect. If you say white space no wrap, then that means that it's not going to break the content, and the content may run off the visual page, which is not exactly what you want to do, but in some cases, such as image replacement for headers, it is necessary to push the actual content off of the visual page. Next is text alignment, and again this goes for just about anything, including tables. You will set the text align to a value, and the default values are left, right, justify, center, and inherit. Keep in mind if you use justify, it is going to space out the words and the letters to fill up the available space to make sure that everything is a nice block format just like you see in newspapers. One modification to the text alignment for tables is vertical alignment. This applies to table elements only, such as table header and table data. You can set the vertical align to a value such as baseline, length, sub, super, top, text top, middle, bottom, text bottom, initial, and inherit, because this allows you to set the actual vertical alignment of the content in the table data or the table header or table data cell. However, chances are you don't know exactly what text top or text bottom is. So here's an example of text that is set to text bottom. You can see in the first cell we actually have some nice big text, but in the second and the third cell we have just standard size text. And basically with the vertical alignment of text bottom, the other two cells are aligned to the base set of the first cell, mainly because that is the biggest text and the rest of the text is lining up to the bottom of that. It may seem a little unnecessary right now, but in some cases you may need this to line up so that certain data appears more uniform than others. As far as tables go, you also have a caption. And with the caption, just like figures, you can actually specify the placement. But on tables, you only have a few values. In this case, you can say caption side top, which is the default value, and caption side bottom, in which case it just moves the caption to the bottom of the table visually. That doesn't mean that you have to modify your HTML code at all. It's just the design concept is moving the caption from the top of the table to the bottom using CSS only. Lastly, you have the option to stripe a table by using color striping. Now this is a little tricky, but once you get the hang of this, it is a very, very nice thing to have. For example, if you have a gigantic table and you want to make sure that all the data in it is easy to read, you can make sure that every other row is colored, so that way it's easy to align the data for each row that the data is associated with. To do this, you will say table row colon nth of type and then even or odd. The choice is up to you. But keep in mind that if you use this, TR also includes your table headers because they are inside a table row. After you do that, you set the background color to a value, and every other row is going to be colored that. Makes it a whole lot easier than going into each row, setting a class or setting an ID, and then stylizing that. It's just a bunch of extra work. With this, it makes it nice and easy. I recommend playing around with this, which you'll see in the Code With Me videos, so you can actually get a good idea about what the different even and odd values are, including the table header. This can throw things off once you get into the table head, table body, and table footer, but we'll get to that later. That is it for this video. If you have any questions about Chapter 14 or anything discussed in this video, please send me an email or hit me up on Twitter and I'll get back to you in the best possible answer.